Alright, so we're looking at another example of how to use the quadratic formula to solve for quadratics. Now, if you notice, the only difference here is that we're given a quadratic equation with the variable h instead of the variable x. No big deal. Same quadratic formula. The only difference is that my answer will be h equals instead of x equals. Okay, so we're going to begin by first identifying our a, b, and c value because they are critical so that we can plug them into the quadratic formula. My first a value is always the coefficient to h squared, right? So in this case, this will be my a value. My b value will be the coefficient to h. This would be b. And then my constant, the one that has no variable, is my letter c. So let me go ahead and plug in my values into my quadratic formula. So we will have h is equal to negative. Again, that's the same negative that I have to borrow from the formula. But when I get to b, b is actually 6. So I'm just going to replace the b with a 6 plus or minus the square root of b squared. We're going to use 6 again. So 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is negative 3. Remember that we use the sign in front of the number. So it's negative 3. And then c is another negative 3. All over 2 times a, which will be negative 3. Alright, so let's go ahead and clean up as much as we can. Negative times 6 will just be negative 6. So h is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared is 6 times 6, so that's 36. And now we have to multiply negative 4 times negative 3, which would be positive 12. But then we have times negative 3 again. So that's going to be 12 times negative 3, so that's negative 36. Okay? And then all over 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6 again. Okay, so now I have h is equal to negative 6 plus or minus the square root of, well, 36 minus 36 is just 0. So I end up with the square root of 0 all over negative 6. So now what I would do on the next step is say, well, now I have h, that's equal to negative 6 plus or minus. I can take the square root of 0. Okay, the square root of 0 is like asking yourself what number times itself gives you 0. And the only number that does that is 0. So the square root of 0 ends up being 0 all over negative 6. Okay, now something interesting happens here. You have negative 6 plus or minus 0, right? So typically what you would do is you would split this up into two possibilities. You would take the positive as your first possibility. So you would get negative 6 plus 0 all over negative 6. And then you would take the other possibility, h equals negative 6 minus 0 all over negative 6. But notice that in both of them, if you add 0 or subtract 0, the numerator doesn't change. So we end up with h is equal to negative 6 plus 0 as negative 6 over negative 6. So our answer ends up being a positive 1. On the other side, the same thing happens. H is equal to negative 6 minus 0, so that's negative 6 all over negative 6, and we get the same answer again of just positive 1. Okay, so this is a unique situation where the quadratic has the same solution twice. All right, and commonly what this is called is we would say h is equal to 1, and we would abbreviate it, call this a double root. All right, it just means that it's a solution that occurs twice for this quadratic. And that's it.